I think we'll get started. I think we'll get started. We have other people who will be arriving as we carry on, but we have a good bit of turf we want to cover today. So I'm Jim Beckwith. I'm here along with others from the LGBTQIA+ working group, several of us, us two. And we decided that it'd be a good thing for the LGBTQIA+ History Month of October to do a session, which we did last week with Nathan. And then that'd be good to have a second session. And this time we have Nikki Rivera here with us today. I want to introduce them briefly. We've already introduced Nathan Dick last week. Nathan's a recent grad at Millersville University with a degree in secondary social studies education. Grew up over in Manheim Township School District, where we're going to hear also has been involvement. Hi, Patrick.
You get the front seat when you're late.
Yay! And so we talked a little bit about how there are principles of Kingian nonviolence that apply, and Nathan's going to review those briefly before we get started, because those are pretty important for how we approach these issues for us. And yeah, so that was Nathan. There's more that I said about Nathan last week, but I'll turn now for Nikki. What I found online is you taught Spanish for 30 years in Warwick School District, and that you also then worked with the GSA Club, and I had to review in my head Gender and Sexuality Alliance Club in the high school, and is for LGBTQ+ youth and their allies to have a safe place and to have good conversation and support for one another, as well as activism and visibility. And then also served on Manheim Township School Board as director for 8 years until 2024, and with the IU13 board. Is currently state representative elected in 2024.
Last year, yes, in November.
Yeah. State representative for the 96th legislative district, which goes from King Street in Lancaster up to the airport, and then from just the east side of East Petersburg over, not quite as far as, well, part of Oregon Pike, but not the whole thing.
Right.
And then let's see what else. With emphases on fair funding for public schools and pathways for high school graduation, apprenticeship programs for employees, physical and mental health concern options, educating families and youth about environmental concerns, and working for a Commonwealth where no one is marginalized, which is the purpose of our talk together today. Our specific interest from the LGBTQIA+ working group is what's happening regarding LGBTQAI concerns in Pennsylvania, guidance as a parent for those of us who have children or grandchildren who are gay or trans, which is quite a few folks in this congregation. And our basic question as a congregation always is, what is ours to do? What is ours to do? And I should have said your mom and your husband are here with us today.
So awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming back. It's great to see that we didn't scare you away. I didn't scare you away last time. What I want to do first before we dive into our conversation today is review what we talked about last. So I want to go and make sure that those 6 principles and 6 steps are back into our minds, so we know that's how we're going to navigate the conversation today. That's going to be the first part. Then we're going to move it to a more conversational base. Nikki Rivera is going to tell us about what's happening on the state level, if there's any key legislation there happening, the Fairness Act. And then we are going to open it up kind of to you guys to talk about things going on locally in your community. You can ask either Nikki or I questions about what's happening in local government. I know more of the Lancaster's like based up. She's got the state, she's got the school board experience. And just kind of have this be, how can we connect everything while applying the nonviolence principles to it? So if you want to, there's still extra papers over on that table. I want to quickly review the 6 principles. It was that huge long sheet that we looked at last week, and just make sure that we remember what all it was saying. So Kinney and nonviolence and Martin Luther King established 6 principles that should guide your life, guide your way of living. And he said that this is the way that you should, be a nonviolent practitioner. His first one is that nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. So he said that you want to be nonviolent, you have to be courageous. This isn't something that you could just like hide under and like shelter behind. You have to be active. You have to get out of your comfort zone, whatever that means, and you have to be courageous. That was principle number 1. Principle 2 is that the beloved community is the framework of the future. So King didn't just say like this is something we should look at now, that this is the way that we need to move on as a society. This is how we go to the next step, and that we need nonviolence to take us further to better ourselves, to better our society. 3 is attack forces of evil, not persons doing evil. So he kind of gets really deep into the idea of attack the idea, not the person doing the idea. We had a great conversation last week, I thought, about how do we go about that with like homophobic and transphobic remarks of like, how do you just not hate that person? You have to hate the idea. You have to understand, and King says for principle 3, you have to understand that they are also being subjected to this evil, that they're also a victim in this evil, that they are still, being subjected to this too. And so that was a good conversation we had last week, that we need to attack these forces of evil, not the people doing it or the person. 4 was accepting suffering without retaliation for the sake of the cause to achieve the goal. So that we need to bear some sort of brunt or some sort of suffering voluntarily, so that way we can push our goal forward. So we can push this idea of bettering, in our conversation today, LGBTQ rights, that we can't just do it, that there has to be some sort of suffering brought on. Last week, we talked about what does that look like? How much suffering is it? Who is doing that suffering? And we said we had a great discussion about like allies. Maybe this is where allies can really play a major part into furthering LGBTQ rights. The 5th principle is avoids internal violence of the spirit as well as external physical violence. So Martin Luther King, we talked about last week, how we need to keep our spirits high, that, the goal of the other side and the goal of this evil is to, bear us down, to like push us down so we don't feel happy, that we don't feel hopeful about the future. But principle 5 really says that we need to keep that hope. We need to keep this spirit going, and that we need to, come together as a community. It also says to avoid the external physical violence. So when it, at all possible moments, we shouldn't get physically violent. We need to keep, talking and like working through it. We shouldn't just voluntarily throw ourselves into physical violence. And then 6, this one we said was a hot topic item, was the universe is on the side of justice. We said that the universe, no matter what, will always bend towards justice. And then we discussed, like, is that true or is it not? And I kind of gave you an adapted version that maybe it's we who bend it to justice. Maybe it's humans, man, who bend it towards this side of justice, that it's not, just inherently on its own. So those are the 6 principles, how we should like go through our life, go through these conversations that we're having with, people about like homophobic comments or, people against us. The other thing we discussed last session was the 6 steps of Kinney nonviolence. We briefly discussed it. It's kind of like the scientific method, if you guys are like scientists, where we have 6 steps to solving a problem, whether that's talking with somebody, whether that's, governing, whether that's, just talking to a neighbor. And so the first step was information gathering. We always need to gather information first. We need to collect, info on what's happening. What are their beliefs? What are their stances? Then we need to educate ourselves and those around us. That's step 2. So after we collect this information, we need to go and talk with others, say, okay, this is what's happening. This is, where we can see. Educating also is happening kind of at the same time as the information gathering. As you're educating yourself and those around you, you're still gathering other information. You're gathering other people's thoughts. Then 3 is a personal commitment. The personal commitment is when you kind of like write that thesis statement. What's your main argument there? Do you make this claim? Do you believe and full-heartedly think this? Do you not? You want to figure out what can I do? Once you make your argument, you also want to think of in your lines with the 6 principles of what amount of suffering am I willing to take on for myself? Am I going to be the people on the front lines? Am I going to be the people, bearing most of this brunt? Or am I going to play more of a back role? Am I going to help and support those, uplift those? How much suffering? You're going to come to a consensus of what you want. Step 4 is negotiation. So that's when you're going to actually talk with the other side. You're going to work with the other side and try and solve it. You're going to negotiate. What can I give up? Where can I meet in the middle? Where can we compromise? If step 4 doesn't work, then you move on to step 5, which is dramatic direct action. So that's where you tried this negotiation, it fell through. And like we kind of see that playing out here in E-Town with the school board, where the school board isn't really negotiating with us. They're not really willing to meet us, at the table. So we go to step 5, dramatic direct action, where you are going to go and you're going to go to the newspaper. You're going to start protesting. You're going to bring these problems to the public light with the hopes of gaining some concessions. You're going to protest school board, people. You're going to go to the newspaper with the hopes of, embarrassing them or making them feel like they're in the wrong because they, in our opinion, are. And then step 6, this always has to happen last, is reconciliation. After you gain or lose something, you need to reconcile with both your community and with the people who you are like negotiating with. You need some sort of coming back together, realizing once again that we are all people attacking this one idea. We're not attacking each other, trying to help ourselves. So those are the things that we reviewed, very condensed what we talked about last week in our last hour. Now I'm going to hand it over to Nikki, and she's going to tell you about what's going on in the state level, specifically with the Fairness Act, and let you see a little bit into her life on the day-to-day.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to meet you and glad to be here with you. There's so much I have to say, but I'll start with the state level Fairness Act. Before my time in the state legislature, there was this piece of legislation called the Fairness Act that had been brought forth on the House floor for years, for sessions, and each session is 2 years long. Each election period in the House is 2 years long. So for several sessions, the Fairness Act had been brought forth to vote on, and it had not passed. This past session in 2024 is the first time that it did pass the House floor. It is an idea that was generated among House members. And what it says is that when someone needs to rent a home, have a job, go to the doctor, do basic life things on a daily basis, that you won't be discriminated against if you're LGBTQ, if you identify in the LGBTQ community. Sounds pretty simple, but again, when we have different definitions of what justice looks like, it makes it complicated to pass laws like that. So it did pass the House floor in 2024. And again, this year, it's now in the hands of the Senate. What will happen to it in the Senate? It will not be given any attention. It will be left to die by the end of this session, which ends next year, 2026. They most likely will not bring it out for a vote at all. If they were to decide to bring it out for a vote from committees, it probably wouldn't make it out from committee. If they don't think something's going to pass on the Senate floor, it likely won't go to the Senate floor. So we're looking at the Fairness Act, again, not happening, but moving the needle. It passed out of the House. So that's what I've committed myself to doing, is helping to move the needle wherever I can. And I'm impatient. My mom can tell you all about that. I'm very impatient. So moving a needle is really hard for me when I want the whole thing to be accomplished right now. So I'm doing my part in moving the needle. So that's what's happening in the state legislation right now as far as LGBTQ rights go. At the local level, where I've helped move the needle, is I'll start in the reverse. My husband and I have 5 kids. 4 of them are biological. Our oldest is adopted. She was one of my students at Warwick. She only spoke Spanish when she came to my classroom, my AP classroom, and she stuck to me like glue. And she was a foster child. And so when her foster placement needed her to move somewhere else, we went to the guidance counselor and said, how do we get this kid? We're not foster certified. She was going to turn 18. And so we were able to take her because from 18 to 21, a child in foster care converts into the, transitions into the semi-adult living circumstance, semi-independent living circumstance. So she was able to come with us even though we weren't foster parents. So she stayed with us. She was 18 when she moved in with us. She graduated with our oldest child in 2017 at Manheim Township High School. Our oldest child, biological child, Tyler, is transgender. And when he came out in high school, it all made sense. We had a whole lot of struggles throughout him growing up. And as we learned more, my husband's a science teacher, as he learned more of the sciences and how transitioning from gender to gender happens in the natural world, it is possible, that it happens also with humans. I think we seem to exclude ourselves from a lot of things that the animal world does, forgetting that we're also animals. And so it is evident in the natural world that someone could be transgender. And so we've reflected on his life from birth, and it made sense. So we followed along with what he finally verbalized and said, this is what I need. I need you to know this. If I'm going to live my life, this is what I need. And what parent wouldn't listen to that? So we continued to learn. At Warwick in 2016, the GSA, the LGBTQ club, the advisor had stepped down to do something else, and there was no advisor. So my principal said, hey, you have a child who identifies in this group. What do you think about taking on this club? And I said, sure, I can do this. So realizing where I have experience and where I can step up and help out, that's my whole goal in life, is where do I fit? Where is there a need that I can serve? So taking on the GSA in 2016, having it from 2016 to 2024 till I resigned, was a phenomenal experience. We went through so many ups and downs, and I learned so much more from that group of kids than from other college classrooms in my lifetime. So it was a joy to help move the needle for people who just want to live a more inclusive life. If you don't realize you're offending someone until someone tells you, you don't know what to change about things. So if I tell somebody, my kid wants, dental care from a dentist who won't be rude and dismiss them. My kid wants to rent an apartment, just rent an apartment from somebody who won't discriminate against him. Oh, okay, well, let's get to know this a little bit more. So those conversations are what I really like to be part of. At the school board level, somebody said, you should run for school board. I was the only teacher going to the microphone stating some things that I found obvious, but that others didn't. So running for school board became another opportunity to share my teaching knowledge and then also my LGBTQ community knowledge. At the state level, in state government, you cannot discriminate against somebody at work because of their gender identity and sexuality. That clause is not in every non-discrimination clause all over the state. It's in state government, and then every other industry, if they want to put it in there, they can. They talk to their own solicitors. So Manheim Township School Board did not have it in the clause. And I was a Democrat appointed, not even elected, appointed by a majority Republican board to serve on the board because of my substantial knowledge of school and people, and I didn't scare people away. They felt comfortable putting me in a voting seat, which I'm very happy about. So when it came time for me to say, hey, I'm looking at our non-discrimination policy, my other colleagues, 8 of you, we don't have gender identity and expression in this for people that we're not going to discriminate against. That's wrong. So we should probably do something about that. And that board voted with me to put it in our non-discrimination policy because they know me. They know I'm not going to lead them into some torturous situation. This is just making life better and easier for people while they're in our care, in our schools, for our staff, our students. So we got it added into the Manheim Township non-discrimination policy. I also serve on the IU13 board, which covers Lancaster and Lebanon counties. And I was one of 22 board members in that board. And I said, hey, IU, we don't have gender identity and expression in the non-discrimination policy, and we should. It's the right thing to do. We have staff, we have students, we have families, and it says a lot about an organization that's inclusive. And so I went to the director and he said, not sure that this is gonna fly. And I said, well, can't guess. We just have to take a vote about it. So we took a vote about it and it failed. I said, okay, that's all right. The next year came around again and I said, it failed last year, but where are we this year? Let's get the temperature again this year on making people feel welcomed working here and learning here. And it passed. So just continuing to move that needle, got that gender identity and expression policy into 2 boards that I served on. And I don't know that it's in other school districts in Lancaster County. Hopefully it's not been taken out since I left the board, but that would have been made front page news, so I don't think it has. So just moving the needle where I can legislatively, based on my life experience, based on my common knowledge of people, is what I've been doing, what I want to continue to do. I'll stop there.
So I want to open it up now to be more of a conversation-based discussion for today. I want you guys to have the opportunity, knowing the Canadian nonviolence piece, now hearing from Nikki's personal experience, seeing what things are at the top of your mind. What questions do you have that's either happening on local or state level government? Or if you have any scenarios or anything that you want to specifically keep talking about in the Canadian nonviolence realm, we can also open it up to that. You guys some of you live in E-Town, so we just went through that major book banning with the 6 books that just got banned. So we could talk about that. We could talk about, anything happening on. What's at the top of your guys' head?
Am I correct to assume that Elizabethtown School Board doesn't have the gender identity
Yes,
piece of it?
correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I was thinking hopefully, but no,
Not yet.
not yet.
One of the things I hear most often and wonder about myself, because every situation is different for an LGBTQ plus kid. At what point do we recognize that people might not just have a sense of who they are now, but that might continue to morph and change and might even go back to thinking cis about themselves? I mean, for me, it's just a matter of kind of assuming that they will let me know if they know that they're free to be who they are. But I think that bothers a lot of people, that we're going to, by passing laws and things like this, we're going to not just encourage, but cause people to make changes that they might not otherwise make. I don't know how to help people realize the folks that I know are just very convinced to the core of their being about what's going on. But I don't know. I don't know if you deal with that. That's probably something legislators talk about. I don't know. I mean, that seems to be the mantra right now, is that we're going to stop all this business of getting people to become this when they wouldn't otherwise be. That seems to be the mentality on the conservative side.
Yeah, I just, my son being transgender has nothing to do with me. So making it not a me thing all the time is the perspective that I take.
As in being disappointed we might not have grandkids kind of feeling.
Not even that, just
No.
what someone else is going through. I try not to assume that I know everything about it. So somebody else's, there are people that identify one way or the other in lots of different topics throughout their lifetime, and I'm not to judge what they're experiencing. I think we do things based on what we know to be true in ourselves and what we become courageous enough to display. And someone's journey doing that is not for me to say anything about. I just, who somebody marries, it's not me. So if it's not me, I shouldn't be so vain, I think, to put myself in someone else's situation. So I want to leave the field open for people to do what they're doing, what they need to do, what they know to be true for themselves, without inserting myself into that. I'm not part of that equation. So keeping those boundaries, I think, is really hard for people, because we love to judge. We do. And I love everyone's shoes in here. I love your shoes. I love your earrings, but it doesn't mean that I have to judge everything from the core of your being to adapt to what I like. It's just not about me. So remembering that most situations are not about me personally helps me to get clarity with what's going to open the playing field for somebody versus close it down.
I think kind of connected to what you were saying, there's not much, we all like to kind of think of things as being permanent, but there really is very little that doesn't change, that we may think it's going one direction and then it may take a sharp turn at any point. And that could be helpful to somebody, like the laws, the rules that you're passing could be helpful to somebody who currently thinks they're trans. And other people might think, well, that's not going to help anything, right? But they may change their minds later. They may later find, oh, it's actually my best friend. Like, you know, this, I'm really glad that this was passed. It could change for them at any minute. And as long as it's more of a free rule, then that allows people to move in and out, you know, as it fits them.
I think too, to add to this, like how often do we like change and evolve? Like I think of like clothing I used to wear like, 5 years ago. I'm like, oh, I would hate to wear that now. Like it doesn't mean that it was invalid what I was wearing back then. It doesn't mean that my opinions back then of liking this clothing was any less. So I think we can apply the same thing to sexuality and gender. You might live 20 years and then you might realize, oh, it changes. That doesn't make it any less valid or any less, meaningful. And it like, all of the ways that we change and like evolve as ourselves. Think like, do you live in the same house for your entire life or do you decide to sell it because you don't like this aspect anymore? And I think as long as we leave it open, like, and just have the opportunities there, we're a country of freedoms, I think. Let's leave those freedoms open.
Even with, I'm looking at myself wearing pants today. Back in the day when women couldn't wear pants, who made that rule? And it went away. Like we can free ourselves up of a lot of things and just have so much less constraint in life. And that is true freedom, I think, when I can choose what I'm going to do in certain realms of my life. And I'm happy for the trailblazers that came before me. And I'm happy to work alongside a lot of trailblazers moving forward who are going to keep freeing up opportunities for more and more people.
Push that a little bit further. One of the most difficult conversations for me with parishioners over the years as a pastor was when they would say, so if your child says it feels good to drink, I just enjoy how I feel when I'm drunk, that means you'd let them do it? I mean,
Right.
at what point that they're not going to harm themselves doing this?
Some countries do allow that.
Back in the day when I was a teenager, it
That's a
would be,
construct.
you want your kids to get
Yeah.
AIDS? I mean, that was the mantra.
Right.
At that point. And, it did happen to a lot of people. But
I tend to question anything and everything man-made. It's just what I do. And I find great things, and then I find things I'm going to avoid. So
I'm sorry, I'm not asking for an answer all. I'm just trying to think about the things that are hard to talk about with people because that was where you were talking about they have a point, how to figure out how much of that point to say, yes, there's truth, but this is doing damage on the other side. And those are things that
Can you share a little bit more about your experience with your son? At what age and all those kinds of.
So my son was, I don't know if you've heard of the condition selective mute. He was selective mute at age 3. He stopped talking, period. And he would only talk to my husband and to me, and not at school, not to Fred, wouldn't talk, just didn't talk. And no matter what dangling carrot you had, say thank you, nothing would shake him. And so he experienced selective mutism from ages 3 to 5. His kindergarten teacher was a miracle worker, Anna McKenna. And we said to her, we've had a hard time. Tyler's not gonna, and Tyler hadn't transitioned yet. We said our child's not gonna say anything to you, and it's gonna be hard to understand the cues of what he needs and what he wants. And she did some magic on him and just brought him out of his shell. And so being selective mute around the time where kids start to figure out who they are and recognize their genitalia and know about the world around them and how they fit into it is a common way to know whether your child is questioning their gender from what we learned. And so he would never get undressed, and big house of kids and our parents. We'd go to the pools in the summer and things like that. He would never undress in front of anybody. He never wanted to be, there was so much shame in his own body that he would seclude himself at all costs to not change or be around anybody. He started wearing traditionally or typically boy athletic shorts, boy clothes. His friends were boys. He didn't hang out with girls. He was, in every sense of the word, what we thought was a tomboy. And then when puberty came, he was completely miserable. And it was at that point that we thought we had some major mental issues to try to figure out. And we personally didn't have any friends in our friend circle that were transgender. We had friends who were gay and other married couples, same-sex marriage, but we didn't have any trans friends, and he didn't know what he was experiencing. And after a very tumultuous couple of years, it became clear, he said, this is what's going on with me. And I feel better saying it, and it's out, and this is who I am. His name, he was our first biological born. His name was given to him as my mother-in-law's name. We passed it on to her. And when he came out, my mother-in-law had just died. So we were grieving the loss of my mother-in-law. And now we're grieving the loss of a name that our child took. And he said to us, I love this name. It'll be great for a different family member, but I cannot use it. And he was very clear in what he needed.
And what age was this then?
This was 9th, 10th grade.
Okay.
And his friends at school knew before us. I got a text one day at school. My husband and I got a text that said, hi, I have band practice after school. Can you bring me a change of clothes? And I'm using the name Tyler at school. I'm transgender. And I'm teaching, and I'm like, what just happened? And I texted my husband. I said, don't reply. We've got some things to talk about. But he was comfortable with his friends first. His friends would go to the bathroom with him. He never went to the bathroom alone. His friends would make sure the bathroom was empty so he could use it. We talked with the faculty at Manheim Township, and they said, we've got this changing area. He didn't want to be with the boys. And it's not I think some people equate gender with pedophilia in some way. He is the most pure, loving person ever. And so to have him seen like that really just rips the mama bear out of me. So he was given accommodations to have his privacy and figure himself out. And we were so grateful for that. And then he wanted his chosen name to be on his, I'll tell you about Marshall. He was a graduation marshal. So in your junior year, the high school, so many things are gendered that we didn't realize were gendered before. So in Manheim Township, the top 4 students in the class are the junior marshals at graduation. They get to direct the seniors to come in and seat the seniors and tell them to stand and sit down or whatever. And so Tyler was in the top 4, and there's supposed to be 2 boys and 2 girls. Well, he said, I'm in the top 4. And I said, well, which category? He said, well, I'm number 2 as the boy, and I'm number 3 if I were the girl. And I said, whatever, just do it. He said, well, I'm wearing boys' clothes. I said, oh, of course you are. So it looked like there were 3 and 1 at graduation. And I thought, oh no, I was on the school board. I thought we're going to start getting questions about why we didn't pick 2 girls. Or anyway, nothing happened, but everyone was fine and everyone stood and sat when they were told to, and it worked out just fine. But just realizing how gendered that was, homecoming court, all sorts of things that became gendered. But he said, I want my given name on my high school diploma. We said, okay, looked into that. And we found an attorney in Lancaster who does name changes. And it was 2016, it was January. And we said, we need this done fast because we don't know if this option will go away. So we, in April, had his name changed by the judge, and the judge was completely sympathetic and kind. And the school district was sympathetic and kind. Even before we changed his name legally, we asked the school district, we created a form that we signed. that would change his name in the system. So that whenever there's a substitute, the substitute would call the correct name. The thing that it did though was changed all of his historical data from kindergarten forward to his given name. So we had some extra steps. When he took his SATs, we had to call the organization and say, you received this name, but it's the same student number. See, it's all student number. It's not name related. When he applied for college, he met with colleges that are gender affirming and chose his schools based on where he could live and be and thrive and not have to think about gender. Just let me think about the math major I want to be and not about my clothing and my genitalia. So getting to those spaces was so hard to get to, and we would love for other people to not have to go through all those hoops.
It sounds like you learned a
Just
lot.
blossom. Oh, it's just phenomenal how much we've learned. And through the kids at school too, who were in the GSA. So with the GSA, we, I forget what year it was. We started what's called the gala, G-A-L-A, well, G-A-Y-L-A. We had a gala at Warwick High School, and we invited all of the Lancaster County High School GSAs to have like a prom type atmosphere, because a lot of these kids don't go to their own homecomings and proms and just avoid them like the plague. And I'm hoping that changes and that we don't need galas. But for now, we've had two. We have them every other year. We were hoping that the baton would be passed to other schools, but no other schools would take them. They would say, you know, our school district won't support this. They won't let us do this. They'll protest this. They'll make it a mockery of it. And that didn't happen at Warwick. Our administration was very supportive, and Lidditz Chooses Love was very helpful. It's now turned into Lancaster Chooses Love. But Parker Webb with Lidditz Chooses Love was very communicative. I had him in as a guest speaker sometimes, but when we had our gala, we had community help out there greeting kids as they come in. We had donations given, so we had a DJ, actually a Conestoga Valley graduate who was a student of my husband's. He's a very successful DJ. He DJed for us at a fraction of the cost, and we had almost all the schools in Lancaster County represented at the gala. It was extraordinary. No one took it on for the next year, so we did it again 2 years later. And I just found out last week that Warwick's doing it again in 26. So it's going to be, it seems like it's becoming a Warwick thing every 2 years. Just a place where kids can be and know they won't face what they face in the hallways and at other dances. And
You didn't have protesters or political people who were
we did not.
nothing. Okay, great.
If we did, they weren't to my face. But nobody came. Lidditz Chooses Love had banners and people lining Orange Street outside the school so that when kids came in and their families dropped them off, they were coming into this big cheerful thing. People were honking as they drove by. And we did not have protesters. I'm shocked, but we didn't. There were other things protested, but not the gala.
Have you ever felt threatened in any way? Has there ever been certain situations that, you know, you've been in that, you know, because you stand up for this, that you feel like you've been
Targeted?
compromised? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, but I have to believe that whatever I feel is minimal compared to what a person who is
Absolutely.
LGBTQ is
Absolutely.
going through. So
Absolutely.
I can take it. I was definitely targeted at school board meetings. And told, like Jim had said, I was told I was converting kids to gay by being part of that club. It's just I had to
I
get
would just
legal
think that in your-
representation.
I was gonna say, in your position being so visible in the community, you know, that, you know, you'd almost have to take steps to really protect yourself.
Yeah, I do. I'm also. I'm not as afraid as maybe one might be. I'm just not afraid. I'm less afraid. Once I turned 50, I was like, I'm just not as afraid as I used to be. My kids are grown. They're all fierce advocates of all people. I think my husband and I have shown them how to do that, but they're going beyond us in what they're doing. We have kids in fests and they amaze me. And they're aware of the possibilities, especially when we see people in other state house representatives in other states being targeted and attacked, and I'm only going to control what I can control. Work to do what I can do. But I have been targeted at Warwick by community members. Not too many, and the majority, I mean, the majority outweighs those few threatening people. The loudest is not the majority. Oftentimes, so keep doing what I'm doing.
I appreciate what you're doing, and we're from York County,
Okay.
so fortunately we can't vote for you.
Oh, no. I vote in York County twice a year, so please do. Please do. We are a representative democracy, and a lot of us aren't represented. A lot of places.
A couple hands over here.
Thinking about Elizabethtown School Board, not just the school board, it's unique, but it's not what's going on right now. Can you talk a little loud? Yeah, thank you. Probably because I'm still articulating what I want to say. My question is, from your experience as a school board member, what can be effective when you're not on the school board and positions seem incredibly entrenched and becoming even more like those positions? Protests don't seem to have a huge impact yet, right? Embarrassment factor doesn't seem to be a thing for the town school board. What are some ways to shift that needle from your perspective?
So what I loved when I was on the school board was hearing what's going well or what people appreciate versus all the don't do this, don't do that complaints about LGBTQ folks. I would say if you're going to go to your board meeting and go to the microphone, stress how important it is for all people, and maybe mention groups that are LGBTQ, but other groups as well, that whatever policy is being discussed, how it's good for all kids. I think a lot of people think we don't want to make exceptions for LGBTQ kids. No, we don't. We want everyone mainstreamed. And so this is how that happens. This is good for our CTC students. This is good for our whatever groups you can think of. And having LGBTQ not be the focal point of why something is good policy. Bringing that out is really important. One thing my husband and I did when I was on the school board, I had fellow board members who were outright against our LGBTQ students being part of our athletics, being part of if my son would have played a sport where he would have been forced to play as a girl and he loved that sport, I don't know what I would have done. My mind would have been blown. He was in marching band, which is a really accepting area for a lot of kids. And so we didn't have the athletics issue so much in our house. My other children who played sports knew that if they ever had a student trans on their team, they were going to invite that person in, treat them with respect, understand there's a separate changing room for them, give them the dignity that they deserve. There was no question in our own kids that they would be accepting of whoever's playing on their team. And if it made them work harder, work harder. That's only good for you. That's not bad for you. And so when I was on the school board, I had a very outspoken board mate who was truly anti-LGBTQ policies in general. So my husband and I invited him over with his wife to talk and just sit down and realize that, we don't have 5 heads. We are human beings with a son who's trans, and some of our other kids are in the LGBTQ community as well. And let's just talk through what your fears are. My husband's opening line to that meeting was, I'm everything you feared. I'm Puerto Rican. My daughter's Mexican. My son's transgender. And you probably have the biggest fears of me. But here's what my family wants. The same thing your family wants. And so sitting down and talking, is really important. And those are scary situations. You don't know what you're gonna get. We invited our son to come. He said, I will not explain who I am to somebody who doesn't care who I am. If someone's curious and wants to learn, I'm there. Otherwise, I don't need to explain myself. So he was not part of that. Another time we had a person who served on the IU board with me, who was a Warwick board member. We had him over to our house with his wife, same kind of conversation. I had another board member from Manheim Township at a different point come over and talk about LGBTQ policies. So just having the conversation, I don't know if it did any good. It didn't do any immediate good, but it may have a ripple effect that I can't see 50 years from now. It might affect something. But I don't want to miss those opportunities to talk because I have a lot to say and I have a lot to learn. And so I want to learn. And oftentimes what I'm learning, it's about fear. It's about, we don't want your boy attacking, this boy attacking these girls. Well, let's understand why that boy is not a boy, because trans girls are girls and trans boys are boys. And let's go from there and figure out a way forward.
Do school board members represent me? This is a question I've always wanted, like, am I being represented on the school board?
Yes,
And
you're represented in every election of every elected person.
Okay, so I can ask for a meeting
Oh, absolutely.
because they do represent.
Yes. Your
This
commissioners,
is such a simple question. I was like, I
you
don't
can
know
meet
who
with
to
a
ask
tax
that to.
collector if you want and say, this is what I
I
expect.
might do that.
Anybody elected represents you. And if they're not representing you, you're out why and who is.
So when you shared how these board people changed, I don't know if it was just in the spirit of being brief and giving time for conversation, but you made it sound so easy. I thought, so she like, have a way of, yeah,
They voted against it and then he voted.
Oh, no, that wasn't easy.
like, but do you have a way that you're going into this and kind of getting people to focus on something simple? Or are you addressing all these little things that people start to bring up that they're afraid, like, I think it's really hard to move things
Mhm.
anywhere because all these little things kind of get in people's way and trip them up. And I don't know if, it's your style that you're being able to.
So my style is, from when my kids were little, I was coaching their teams. My husband coached the Odyssey of the Mind team for my son. And we were out in the community. We had kids at so many different age levels that we knew a lot of different people in a lot of different pockets with scouts and marching band. And one kid went to CTC, one kid was gifted, one has an IEP. We just had pockets of people in our lives. So I think being in the community as our kids were growing up, I wasn't an unknown entity. And I think that's how I got appointed to the board in Manheim Township by the majority Republican, because I came there not expecting LGBTQ changes and talking about hot button topics, but more like I'm a teacher, and if you're talking about getting rid of an AP class, and I know it seems that 45 students taking an AP exam isn't that many, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a successful program when you have 45 students taking an AP test. So coming to the microphone with my teaching expertise help people get to know me. And by the way, I have a kid who's trans. I have a daughter who's gay. We have another daughter who's adopted. And I think just allowing people to get to know me has helped over the years, so that when I vote with them on a lot of things that we agree on, here's something important to me, listen up. And there's a little more respect and background when there's a relationship. There are some people who I have a very respectful relationship with who will never vote with me on putting that policy into play. And those weren't unanimous votes either. The IU 13 board was very divided, but I got 5 more people. The second year, I got 5 more Republicans than I had the year before. And that's representative democracy. We put it through as a majority. So I don't complain when something passes by 1. I'm pretty grateful.
I think going back to Nathan's point of like the the nonviolence thing, we've never had discourteous or angry conversations with people we disagree with. When we invited those people, it was always very polite, and we would just outline facts, like you're worried about like trans athletes. Well, in a school of 1,600, if 1% is trans, that's 16 kids. And if you divide them among the 4 grades, that's 4 per grade. And if half of them are boy, girl, now you're talking about 2 kids, because you're really worried about trans girls. And what percent of kids go in athletics? It's only about, 30, 40%. And what percent are elite athletes? So now when you do the math, really now it rounds to 0. The problem you're trying to legislate with all these laws is 0. You know what I mean? So you might once in a generation have an athlete, but why are you spending all this time and effort attacking these kids and just alienating all these kids over a really a non-issue? And we get into the science of it, me being a science teacher, we get into the, hey, boys are the XXX, well, it's more complicated than that. And, there's androgen deficiencies, and there's this and there's that, and science is very complicated. And then we would go through the science, and in the end, I think it just moves the needle slightly. But it really, when it comes down to it, it's just being loving and supporting of people in general. When we went to, because it's a journey, it was like overnight by sunset on this, and it was a whole journey. And part of it is we went to CHOP, and we'll never forget the first time that I forget what her title was, but she said, "You guys are like unicorns. You don't exist." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" Where 2 parents came in with their trans kid. That never happens. That never ever happens. You never see that. And then, expanding it out to our family, when our family found out, the grandparents, it was never an issue in our family. It's like, hey, this is our kid. We love and support our kid. But the thing is, that is rare. Most kids don't have that. We went to get his name changed. The lawyer was in shock, said usually it's a kid here by themselves. And so our kid is lucky. Our kid has an entire family behind him. Most kids who are in that position do not have that. And so where do they get that level of support? I'm guessing from people like you. I mean, you bothered to come here today to learn more. There's kids out there that don't have what our kid had. So just learning what you're learning, and then take the next step. Like they said, hey, become involved. You're not going to change that school board overnight, but you're going to change it in small increments. And you can see it in the political shifts around here where things are changing. They just don't change as fast as we want it, but they are changing.
And I did at one point apologize to our son. He's 26 now. And I did apologize to him at one point for my initial take on things when he came out to us, because I thought it might be a phase. And I have apologized to him for thinking that was a phase, that I should believe him. I've learned more to believe a victim, because it makes all the difference to that person. And then if things go a different way, fine. But the initial, I believe you, I love you, I support you, is what I've gotten better at since my.
But it is important that when we took them in, that is part of like, they figure that out. Is it a phase or is it not a phase? It's
When we
not
took them into CHOP, when we went to see the psychiatrist at CHOP, yeah.
It's a years long process, and there has to be insistence and persistence for a long time for it to be, it's not like.
So our pediatrician suggested going to CHOP. Our pediatrician congratulated him. I said, "I'm so proud of you." I took him in and I said, "This is what's going on." And immediately the conversation was with Tyler, and she said, "I'm so proud of you. So many people aren't brave enough to say what you're saying right now. And I'm here for you. I'm sure your parents are here for you." And we were like, "Okay, we're on board. Let's do this." And so she suggested we go to this psychiatrist at CHOP. And when we went there, the psychiatrist said, "We're going to have several sessions. And at the end of our sessions, over time, we're going to give you the green light. Yes, we think your child is trans. The yellow light, there could be some other things going on. Or the red light, no, we think it's this other thing that we should look into." He said, "Fine." And at the end of our sessions, she said, "Getting a pretty good green light here. I think you need to keep rolling with what your child's telling you. And I don't see other issues." So we did. And he's a thriving 26-year-old. He's an X-ray tech. He's wants to go back to school for medical physics. He's contributing to this society, and I want the society to contribute to him. It's that simple. I know it sounds so simple, but I don't know why it's so hard. That's my frustration, my impatience.
We
But
work
I'm
with,
so glad that he's had you.
yes.
You know, in each town school district, they have this thing too, where, you know, if your family supports you, you can do the paperwork and we'll change your name on all the records and then everybody will call you what you want to be. And that works out great for some. And other people, no way their family's going to agree to that, you know?
I've had
And
kids at
that's-
Warwick whose parents disagree with the process,
Right.
and it's really hard to, I will not disrespect a person in my care, but finding ways around the denial of services has always been difficult.
We work with kids in the prison program, which is Safe Place Youth Group here. And a number of us are part of that. Almost all of our kids, in fact, I think all of our kids have strong parental support. As teachers, you have some insight as to how we get in touch with caring for kids who don't have that support? Because that doesn't seem to be part of this network of kids. And I'm just wondering, there's got to be kids in this community who are hurting, who don't have support from their parents. I don't know what we do.
One thing that I've told my husband I want to do when we retire is to become certified foster family for LGBTQ kids. Because there are kids who need to get out of their home, who need to get away from a situation they're in, but have nowhere to go. So I know foster care services are in dire need for LGBTQ kids. They go from one home to the next because there's no safe place to stay. So I know that's one area of need. My son he was a math major for a while, and he said, I don't want to do this. I said, you can come home, but keep studying, pick something. And so he said, I want to be in healthcare. I want to be a positive person that LGBTQ people come across when they come into a hospital. So he went into X-ray tech. And I think steering people towards safe people, like he's chosen his family physician based on what they're willing to put on their website that they're accepting. Being those accepting people. And it's not always about, I think people are saying, well, I don't know this thing about pronouns. I don't know why I need to say he, him, she, her. Just do what you're comfortable with, but be open to whoever's coming to you and needing your help. And you said, these kids might not have anybody. It only takes one person to shine a light on someone's life and be that one person.
I'm just trying to figure out how to find those kids, because
How to find the kids.
The ones that find us are ones whose parents are supportive.
Well, it's all private information because our guidance counselors can't give out those names. Oftentimes it's teachers who find those kids. It's really hard to know what a kid is going home to. It's awful.
Hey, I'm a substitute teacher. Just a quick comment. And thank you for telling your story. It really resonated with me. I'm having trouble telling the boys, girls sometimes in junior high, so there seems to be a lot of experimentation. And just the other day, they always ask me, hey, Mr. Rob, I'm having trouble with the computer and I can't help. I said, let's ask a friend over here. So I'm going to open the window. I said, can you help him with the computer, the password? And they kind of giggled, and I walked over and student said, Mr. Bob, I'm a girl. So I said, oh, thank you for letting me know. She said, no problem, it happens all the time. So she was very kind to me, but a lot of kids know me. And then the other one was more violent. I was in a health class and had 25 kids. And I'm reading the roster, and the rosters are not always current. They don't have the seating chart. People aren't in the right place. I can't call them by name. So I'm going through it, and I said, what's it? Chloe. And I hear this voice, my name is Xander. I said, what? And I look over, and there's this girl, hair down her face, black nails, black outfit, completely angry. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. And I said, Chloe. I said, well, it says Chloe. And she says, my name is, and she yells at me again. I said, come here. So I walked her outside. I said, listen. I said, I don't know you. I said, I'd be glad to call you whatever name you like. I said, it's not in the roster. I'm gonna pencil it in. Let's not have this conversation again. I said, if you can't do this, I said, go to the office. Visit the counselor, my friend, the counselor. I said, but you're welcome here, but I don't want these outbursts. There's no point. I said, or I'll refer you to anger management. No, I'm just kidding. I try to do it with humor. And then, so that happened. So that went okay. And then the third thing was I was in gym the other day, and then a boy that I know for years came up to me as long, showed the length years in the band. I know him forever. And he says, oh, I says, I need a key for a changing room. And I said, oh, what? Oh, okay. I call him by his middle name. And then I gave him the key and everything. And then I looked down on my roster, and there was a note from my gym teacher I love. And she said, oh, give this person the key to the changing room before class. And he is now going by Cleo. So he's made a transition.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very accommodating, you know, because I come in as a stranger, you know, who knows what's going to happen every day, you know? So that was very well. And I was a little shell shocked because just at the end of the class last year, I had a girl come up to me, and 14-year-old freshman, and she said, oh, I need to pass the library. I'm not doing gym today. I said, oh, are you okay? And she leans over and says, oh, Mr. Bob, I can't do gym right now. I just found out I'm pregnant. I'm a stranger. Why don't you tell me that? Good. That's all.
Yeah.
So every day is exciting. So, but thank you for your presentation.
Do you have any last words to say? Because we need to dismiss for getting on to worship.
If I could just comment on what you were talking about, when it comes to, if you don't know, or changing the habits when we talked about to somebody by saying to a group of people, hey, friends, addressing people by their last name. Those little habits, I've tried to change within myself. I'm trying not to say guys all the time because.
So more neutral. I like
A little
that.
more neutral, just, it's my own personal challenge.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Just so that, the social construct of what gender looks like, I'm not throwing it out on everybody. It might not be somebody else's.
Friends, can we do this? Yeah, okay, thank you.
I had trouble with that, and I would feel so bad, like it really upset me if I said something that wasn't right. And my son said, Mom, if you just say they, them, it's, you know, that covers it. You know,
I've always
just-
done that naturally.
Yeah,
Like if my husband will say, if we don't know what your baby is, I say, oh, they're so cute.
yeah.
Because people are offended if you get the he and the she
Right,
messed up.
right.
They're really cute. And it's,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you, and
Thank
thanks
you
for
both. very
for
much.
having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Here's some that yeah, next week, we have even something else.
I don't know what happens next week. Jason's not here anymore.
Yeah.